if you are an adult now and your child is upset that you did not cut the sandwich into 4s in triangles, which I completely understand. We were sort of the sticks with no crust at our house. How dare you do anything else? And your child starts to get overwhelmed and stressed. It then triggers this stored experience for you. So you are still in your 1976 body.
Yeah.
Are you now just repeating what you saw the adults do?
In a way. So I'm extremely inspired by internal family systems and Dick Schwartz's way of understanding the mind and our body. And what he really explains so well is when we have an experience as a kid, and many, not one, where we essentially learn this part of me, the part that gets overwhelmed and doesn't yet have the skills to manage those overwhelmed feelings, so they just explode out as a volcano. If that part is really what I would say is non-conducive with attachment, it's not like I need my parent to say tantrum away, but I don't get presence, I don't get compassion, I just get yelled at. I need to develop, okay, and stay with me here, a different part of myself that shuts down that part. So I literally develop a different part that's like, Becky, you ungrateful kid, you are too much. Stop doing this. And that's actually called, in IFS language, a protector part. It sounds mean, but I think we all understand, its function early on is to protect me.
Yeah.
Because at least if I do that to myself and almost shame myself, at least then I don't get the wrath of my parent, or I don't get sent to my room, I don't get hit, or I don't get this awful punishment.
Right.
And so it's helping me adapt. And so it's helping me shut down
a part of you.
A part of me. Now fast forward to 2022. What a trigger really is, and by the way, not only with our kids, with a partner, with anyone at work, is I think we see a part of someone that we had to learn to shut down harshly in ourself. And then that protector part in us, it really does. It comes to the CEO seat of the board table. It's like, I got this, guys. I got this, right? And then our kid or our coworker, they kind of become like a pawn in our game. We act out on them what we had to learn to act on ourselves.
Right.
And the most empowering shift, okay, is we often, when things trigger us, we look to shut down someone else and kind of make them more like us. I would never have this explosive emotion, or I would never, with a whine. Why is whining so triggering? To me, it just represents helplessness. And I grew up in a pull up your bootstraps family, and I would never be a puddle
Big girl
of
panties is my family. Yeah.
Exactly. Then if you really want to work on your triggers, the question we have to ask ourselves is not, how can I make this person like me? But what am I seeing in someone else that I need to be inspired by, that I need to actually grow that part in myself?
So let's walk through some triggers.
Yes.
So you were talking about whining.
Yep.
Which is a cry for help. So what is the part, what is the exercise we go through for ourselves as adults to let these moments that are triggering us become a moment to repair things or rewire things, or what word would you use?
Great. Both of those, right? So, because the truth is, with our trigger moments, we often think, I have to repair with my kid. I don't like that I yelled at them. But what you're on to, Mel, which is so true, is first we have to repair with ourselves.
Yes.
We have to do both, right? So probably my most popular workshop I do, shockingly, is called my Triggers Workshop. So it's 75 minutes with a whole step-by-step process, but I can get into some of it here. So the first step is in a calm moment, kind of asking ourselves a version of, what is my most generous interpretation of this trigger event in someone else? We always come up with the least generous interpretation with the trigger. My kid's pathetic. My kid's so helpless. My kid's so annoying with whining, right? It's easy to come up with.
What about anxiety? Because that's a big trigger for me. My son, not so much anymore, but one of our daughters in particular is little Mel. And there is intense coming at me. I am 15 texts in a row when she's nervous about something. And then the second I answer the question, it's, well, you're not right. And then hang up.
Yep.
And that is deeply triggering.
To you.
Yes.
So is it the texts that are triggering? Is it the you're not helping me that's triggering? Which is the worst part? Or the whole arc?
The whole arc of it is so it's just like this, I feel like a punching bag almost.
Yeah. So I guess the question I would ask myself there is like, okay, so what's my most generous interpretation of what my daughter's doing, just so I can start to see my kid as a teammate, so we can be against this pattern together that doesn't work for either of us, instead of me looking at my child like they are the enemy and they are the problem. So I think, for example, you might say to soften
what just got me
Yeah.
there is the word enemy. Like, I feel like there was an experience as a kid that if I did something that upset my mom, I was the enemy.
Yes. Yes. And I think that's for so many of our trigger moments. Actually, we can be, when you ask yourself what's the most generous interpretation of someone's behavior, I think this is the big framework shift that I think is the most important in any relationship where there's conflict, is we go from sitting across from someone and looking at them like they're the problem to sitting on the same side as the table as someone and looking together at the problem. So I always think about that, or I try to. Like, am I looking at my kid like they're the problem? Or can I reframe what's happening so I feel like it's me and my kid against a problem? So can we be together against helpless whining versus am I looking at my kid like a helpless, annoying kid who's just bothering me? Can I look at my kid like, wow, something important is happening with anxiety and it's tricky to figure out. It's tricky for us to figure out something that's going to be helpful versus does my kid come and vomit her anxiety and then reject me and that's just annoying? I promise as long as we're in that second mindset, nothing's going to be useful just because like we don't like our kid when we think about them that way.
So true.
Right?
I love the reframe of bring them to your side of the table. What do you do if you're a kid that grew up with somebody who was wildly controlling? What you wore, how you dress, go hug your uncle, know you're doing sports.
What would I say to that kid?
How do you, like if you're now the adult.
Who was that kid?
Yes, because what I want to focus on are kind of the top experiences that you experience as a child, right? So one would be overly sensitive, like I was, overly worried, overly needy, like I was just a super sensitive kid, okay? And when you're a super sensitive kid that feels separate and unsafe emotionally,
Yeah.
and you don't get those needs met, it develops into a certain type of adult. When you are a kid that is controlled by a parent, you develop into certain types of patterns as adult. When you have a parent that is emotionally abusive, either weeks of the silent treatment or struggling with their own mental illness, or they're not there for long periods of time, that develops certain coping mechanisms as a kid. And what I love about what you're saying is so many of us have experiences inside our emotional life of being separate.
Yes.
And what I would love to hear you help us with is, as you're starting to realize, as we listen to you and dig into your work, Dr. Becky, that this is very, very normal. And it's also a huge opportunity for you to take control of your adult life and your adult experience, which then completely changes how you parent and how you love another adult and how you show up at work. Like, I'm sitting here thinking, one of the biggest things that a lot of women write into me about in the work landscape is just feeling terrified about speaking up.
Yep.
And that's directly tied to you being shut down as a kid.
I mean, 100%. Now, this is my favorite topic to talk about, is especially for women, our relationship with desire. All tantrums are, and meltdowns are explosions of desire. That's what they are. You want something badly, and your parents, and something gets in the way of having it. I wanted my grilled cheese cut in a way. And what we so often do as a parent is we shut it down. We're like, you're being ridiculous. But what a kid learns is my desire is unsafe. My desire. And I actually think about this a lot with I have 2 boys and 1 daughter. I think about all of them, but I think about it a lot with my daughter. How can I help her learn regulation skills while preserving access to desire? And I think that, desire in terms of asking for a raise, desire in terms of sex, desire in terms of, am I allowed to want things for myself, right? That's what I think all of us adults are trying to reclaim.
Right.
Right? Am I allowed to want things even when it makes someone else upset is another, right? And most of us, me too, early on learned to, quote, be a good girl, which just means I have learned that I had to, for my survival, to be adaptive, pay more attention to what others wanted of me than what I might want for myself. So what's the process of reclaiming that?
Can I ask one more question before we go into reclaiming? Because this is a huge area.
Huge
because
topic.
We're now also stepping into people pleasing and stepping into perfectionism.
All of it.
And stepping into overthinking and questioning yourself. And the inability to take risks. And this is particularly true for women. And this fear of being seen. And I see exactly what you're saying. That it is tied to a deep-seated belief that you don't deserve to be seen, or that the stuff that you want doesn't matter.
Well, because you learned early on that whenever you were most in contact with your want, with your desires, it endangered your relationships.
Can you give us just a couple examples that really bring it home for people that are like, wait, what are you talking?
So here's a great example, because I also think we do this like black and white thing. We're like, oh, so I just let my kid have the tantrum. Like we give ourselves buckets. So let's say you're in the toy store with your kid. I think it's a perfect example. And you're like, we're just going to the store to get a birthday present for your cousin. Okay?
Yes.
Something like that. And you're like, okay, this is going to go well. And then of course it doesn't go well. Your kid is a meltdown because they want the Lego set. And you don't want to get it for them. It wasn't your plan. So when we say to our kid, what is wrong with you? Like, I told you we're here for your cousin. Can you ever focus on someone else? My kid doesn't learn anything except wanting things for myself is bad and wrong. Period. Now, the opposite isn't good either. Oh, okay. I mean, I guess we'll get you that Lego set, and that's okay. I mean, if you want to get the Lego set for your kid, obviously get the Lego set. But if your plan wasn't to get it and you didn't want to get it, actually, that's another tricky message for your kid. A kid learns my wants and needs are so overpowering to me, but wow, they just made my sturdy leader become not so sturdy and change their mind. That's actually also dangerous. Here's where that in between is. Oh, it's so hard to be in a toy store and see all these fun things and not get anything. Of course you want that Lego. It's normal to want things. It's actually awesome that you know what you want. You know you want this Lego. Here's the thing. I could take a picture of it. There will be a time, whether it's Christmas or Hanukkah or your birthday, that something's coming up. We're not going to get it today, sweetie. It's just not one of those days where we're going to buy you an extra thing. I know that's so hard. And so what my kid learns there is my parent sees the want under the meltdown. I didn't become a bad kid. I became a kid who's a good kid who wants something for myself. And that's just a hard thing to want something and not have it. I'm preserving access to my desire while I still have a very boundaried, sturdy leader.
How do you, as an adult, reclaim that access to desire and repair this?
I think starting, and I think for anything we're trying to shift, it's actually hugely helpful to our circuits, to our body, to just start with, like, the things that I struggle with today, they were all adaptations. That's why it's actually why I don't like diagnosis as a psychologist. It's why I don't love the word symptoms. I think it's like kind of this cruel thing we do to people that we're like, yeah, wow, you were really crafty as a kid and learned to adapt. And now we're going to smack a label that like is pretty mean on you. Like, what's wrong with you?
Right.
You know? And I do feel like there's something in our body that's like, hey, can you recognize like everything I did for you? You know, like, okay, maybe I don't work for you anymore, but like I need some credit, right? It's like anything else in life. Right? You have to say to an employee at your table, like, that's a great idea. We're going to hold that for next quarter. Right? And if you only say to them, no, 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 they just get louder and louder. They want to be seen too. They don't necessarily.
Or they shut down.
Or they shut down and it comes out in another way.
Right.
So I think actually there's something to saying. There's not something. There's so much to saying. I have a phrase I always use for myself. Thank you for your years of service. Like I think, you know, when I'm struggling with something, so if someone's now like, yeah, I have this time and I'm trying to like do stuff for myself and figure out what I want. And all that happens is I have a panic attack. It's so hard to know what I want. Just to put your hand on your heart and even say to that feeling, like, this must have been adaptive early on to actually not know what I want. And it's frustrating for me now. And still, like, I appreciate the way that you helped keep me safe for probably 18 years. Like, that was really meaningful. And then I could continue. I'm going to try little experiments here and there. You're going to resist. You're going to tell me I'm being selfish. You're going to tell me this is stupid. You're going to tell me I'm not good at things. That's okay. That's your role. But now that I know that, like, I'm going to show you over time that we're safer now to try different things. Like, and if someone's listening being like, do you actually mean I should say that to myself? Like, I literally mean you should actually put your hand on your heart and say those words inside your head, or actually just say them out loud. And if you start tearing, that would be completely normal. Or if you're tearing now, completely normal. And I often think these tears we have, they're like tears of relief from, like an inner child in us that's been waiting to hear a certain message. Right? We have to honor the things that hold us back in the way that they used to help us before those things are willing to a little bit release themselves.
How do you start to figure this out? Do you start with the triggers, like wherever you feel that alarm or that sort of discomfort in your body?
Yeah, I think that's a great place to start, especially if you have a visceral reaction, right? Because often what we do after we have a trigger is we blame ourselves. I'm a horrible person. Or if it's, I messed up my kids forever. I'm an awful person. I'm a monster. So what we do is we actually repeat the pattern that got us there. We add aloneness and self-alienation and self-blame. And that's actually the experience of shame. Shame used to be an adaptive emotion when we were kids. Shame stops us in our tracks from being in a part of ourselves that would have been met with distance.
Yeah.
So it's trying to help us out. But shame really does, it's a freeze state. So every time now we add on shame and blame, we add a frozenness. And most people I know who want to change are like, yeah, change isn't conducive with freeze. It's conducive with movement. You have to. So it's interesting. People say, especially after you yell at your kids or something like, oh, but I feel like if I treat myself with compassion or something, I'm like letting myself off the hook. If you want to let yourself off the hook for change, shame and blame yourself, because that will make it impossible to change. Impossible.
Well, it's interesting what you're saying about the fact that when you pile on after you've been triggered and you make yourself wrong for having this stored, memorized, adaptive reaction, whether it's to withdraw or to yell or to blame or whatever, that when you said the piece about you're alone, I think this also contributes to why so many of us feel lonely and feel separate the older we get. That we have spent so long, and it sounds like almost from childhood, adapting to situations that we didn't quite understand, and then we continue to do it and continue to do it and continue to do it, and so you feel like just isolated, with yourself. But all we really want is love. Like, I know that your whole premise is we are all good inside. I believe the same is true. I always say, first of all, anybody is capable of changing. And second, just assume good intent. Before you frickin' pile on somebody, just assume good intent. Easier said than done.
And about yourself, assume good intent. Right?
That's probably the piece I missed.
That's hard. Like, I didn't want to yell at my kid. I didn't want to yell at my daughter. Like, nobody, I don't know any parent who's like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to eviscerate my child. Like, no one wants to do that. And then it doesn't make it, quote, okay that you did it. But I always think we just ask the wrong questions. People are like, so it's okay? It's like, no, it's not okay or not okay. It happened. Now we just have a choice of if we want to be effective in change, period. It's not about evaluating it as okay or not okay. The thing already happened. Like, is it okay that a car crashed? No one would say that. You're like, well, the car crashed. Okay, now what? Right? And yeah, I think assuming positive intent about ourselves actually leaves us on the hook for change, because we can see we're a good person who did not a good thing. And then we actually have the energy to be curious, right? And I think that's where we change, when we're curious. Okay, so I yelled at my kid. Okay, something happened. My kid complained about the dinner I made. But I think a question we often have to ask ourselves about a trigger is not where did the pathway end in a trigger, but where did that pathway start, right? Like, do I have any time to myself? Where do I practice meeting my own needs? Do I need more help at dinner time, right? That I can't wait till I get to the point until.
Well, let's just take this, because we're getting close to you needing to blaze to go teach everybody about mom rage. So let's just take this specific example and break down the tools.
Great.
Because I want everyone listening to be able to walk out of this not only empowered around what these emotional triggers are trying to teach you, but to also have a couple concrete steps to take today.
Yep.
So that they can start to do the repair. Because I agree with you that if you start to repair yourself, if you start to become whole, that is going to be the best way to improve your marriage, to improve the way that you impact the team at work, to improve your relationship with your kids, to improve everything.
Everything.
So you're at dinner.
Yep.
You're cooking dinner.
Mm-hmm.
And describe a situation and then tell us what we should do.
Great. So you're cooking dinner, you put it on the table, you've probably had a really stressful day managing a million different things. And then you put dinner on the table and your kid says, oh, chicken again. I hate chicken. Okay, right. Ooh, and you just go off, like you're so ungrateful. And
why don't you cook dinner?
Why don't you cook dinner?
Well, maybe
you're
your
so
father should cook dinner.
And
yes.
Exactly. You just go off. Okay. So what can we do? Okay. So number one, I want everyone to actually form a sentence that starts like this. I am a good parent who. And here's why that sentence is so important. What we all do to ourselves and our kids is we collapse behavior into identity. I did a bad thing becomes I'm a bad person.
Right.
My kid did a bad thing means I have a bad kid. And then we can't tolerate the thought that we have a bad kid because it makes us feel like a bad parent and we act everything out, right? When you say to yourself, I am a good parent who, and then you insert
Let's do
a behavior.
person. I'm a good person since
Yes,
there's those
perfect.
of you that I'm
a good person who yelled at my kid. I'm a good person who hasn't worked out for a week even though I told myself I'd work out daily, as an example, okay? When you say I am a good person who, you reclaim your good identity and can separate that from a behavior that frankly is probably just not in line with your own values. Like if you want to work out, it's just not in line with your values that you didn't work out. If you don't want to yell at your kids, it's not in line with your own values that you did. And we miss that when we go into I'm a horrible human being. If anyone saw me, they would, they would think I'm a monster. So that is a really powerful sentence to practice every day. And you could practice it at night, looking back on a moment you weren't proud of. I'm a good person who got mad at my partner when I was really stressed about my day. It actually allows you to repair with your partner because you can only repair from a place of feeling like a good person. Because if you're instead in bad person mode, as we know, all of our energy collapses into ourselves to be defensive because it's just too intolerable. So I am a good person who, and if you do have kids, it is game changing to say that. I have a good kid who's saying I hate you to me a lot. Okay, whoa, but they're still a good kid. Why? Oh, why'd they say that? Why would I say that? That's interesting. Because I have a shitty kid. No, wait, I have a good kid. I have a good kid who's saying I hate you. We activate curiosity with that sentence. It's so powerful. So that's step one. Step two is what I call double repair. Repair is the single most important strategy to get good at as a human. I really, really would, put my signature on that. And if you think about what that means, is if you are supposed to practice getting good at repair, you have permission to keep doing the thing you need to repair for. Because the only way you can practice repair is if you do that thing. So sure, I said it. Dr. Becky said I had to yell at you, honey, because I have to practice repair. It's going to happen. So repair really allows us to add in all the elements to our own body and our kids' body that we're missing in the first place. Because when you go back first to yourself, right? And let's say it's after that dinner incident and you say, whoa, I'm a good person who yelled at my kid. Okay, wait, I'm a good person who yelled at my kid. I didn't mess up my kid forever. I can do this, right? You kind of reclaim that goodness. And then you can go to your kid and essentially say, or maybe it's your partner, hey, name the incident, right? I yelled at you earlier. Number two, explicitly say, and this is important, it's never your fault when I yell at you. Kids especially have to hear that because if we don't tell them something's not their fault, they wire self-blame just to gain control and safety in the situation. And we don't want one more generation of people who's wired with self-blame when they struggle.
Yeah.
It's never your fault when I yell. And I know there's a part of everyone who's like, but it kind of was their fault. And then they said, it's not. Again, we respond to our own body. Now, if you want to say to them tomorrow, 24 hours at least later, hey, I wonder, what we could do about dinner. If you could, tell me the foods you like, or I wonder what you could say to me. if you don't like what I serve, because of course you're allowed to not like something. There's just a lot of ways of saying it. That's a separate conversation.
Right.
Totally separate. So name what happened, say it's not their fault, and then say something like this. I'm sure that felt scary. You were right to feel that way. And just like you have feelings we're trying to help you manage, I do too. And I promise to work on them more. It's not only important in my parenting, it's just important for myself. Repair. Repair changes the direction of your own and your kids or your partner's circuitry. It is so powerful. And then I think number 3, I think if we think about, I call it like the road to reactivity. Like if the last part of the road is yelling at my kids about dinner, right? That's the end of the road. As long as I'm on the road, I'm going to go there. And actually the key is to wonder, what signs do I have that I'm starting that road? Because we often say, like people say to me, they're like, okay, so what am I supposed to do when, no one helped me with this, and then I did this, and then my 3 kids did this, and then this happened. How do I not yell? I'm like, I have no idea. Okay, I just think we have to upgrade your question. I think we have to upgrade.
What would the upgraded question be?
I think the upgraded question is, when did I start down a pathway that ended in me feeling depleted and unworthy? Once I get to depleted, unworthy, then of course my kid commenting about my food triggers every feeling I have. And maybe it starts, oh, you know what? I did tell myself I wasn't going to commit to like any more PTA meetings. And I did sign up and I spent my whole day in this meeting I didn't want to be in. Or I did tell myself I'm going to sleep in one of the days this weekend.
And I didn't do it.
And I didn't do it.
So
right?
let me ask you this as a final question, because I know so many of my listeners and your listeners struggle with this.
Yeah.
So that is beautiful, doable, actionable, 3-step advice when you do it to someone else. An environmental trigger is something that you encounter visually in a space that cues a certain thought or behavior. And a lot of us are aware of triggers in the negative sense. Oh, you trigger me. Oh, that sound triggers this. But you can use environmental triggers in a very positive and profound way. And I talk about environmental triggers extensively in the episode that we did called 5 Essential Hacks to Make New Habits Stick. And I love environmental triggers. And so for sure, this tattoo and your tattoo, that is a visual reminder that triggers a certain positive way of thinking. But you can use a Post-it note. In fact, this is the assignment, everybody. I want you to come up with a phrase. And you can borrow one that you've heard us say today and try it on for size, because it's sort of like you got to see if it fits. And how do you know if the phrase fits? You're not resisting it. You're not arguing against it. You're not saying the phrase, I'm beautiful. Yeah, but. No, you got to come up with something that feels right. It's sort of like Goldilocks and the 3 bears, right? One's too little, one's too big, one feels just right. That's how you try this on. Then I want you to take a Sharpie, a permanent pen, and write it on a Post-it note. And stick that sucker on your mirror or on your laptop, somewhere in your physical space that you're going to bump into it. Your bedside table, the way that Tracy does. Heck, if you're thinking about a tattoo, before you get a tattoo, make the tattoo in a Sharpie on your arm. And, I got to say, I don't want to hear any of you saying, Mel, I got a tattoo because of you. Like you get a tattoo because you want a tattoo. Do not have me pressure you to get a tattoo. And I so believe in this. Don't you believe in this?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, the environmental trigger piece just makes such a difference.
Yeah. You have an interesting environmental trigger on your bulletin board. It's a photo of you. Why are you giggling?
I knew somehow you were going to raise this topic again.
Why? Guys, he is the cutest photo that our friend Jenny Maloney took. And it's a black and white photo of Chris. And he's looking off to the side and he's sort of smiling. And he posted it. He pinned it to his bulletin board. And he wrote in a Sharpie, you, with an arrow pointing at himself. And it sits right on his bulletin board at his desk. And I can see you tearing up. What does that photo mean? What does it trigger you to think?
just to, I think it's I don't think it was, I was prompted to print the picture and tack it on my board as a piece of a homework assignment in a class that I'm taking, where I found myself through dream work and dream analysis to just need to be reminded that I'm perfect the way I am, that I'm yes, I'm good enough, or that who I am is who I am. And so it was a spontaneous response to work that I was doing in this class to say, this was one of those hacks or habits I was going to develop, was to look at that picture every day and see me as I am and embrace and love that person.
Oh, this is for your master's in psych?
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. I think everybody's going to steal that one too.
I mean, I don't have a mirror in my office, so instead I put a picture of myself.
Environmental trigger, everybody. This is a question from Avery.
Hi, Avery.
Okay.
Oakley, you're young.
Okay. I'm listening to the episode where Mel talks about her daughter's love life dilemma with Kendall. And I have immediate request for an episode. I have a 4-year-old daughter, and I want her to feel comfortable talking to me about these kinds of issues when she's in college. So here's the pitch. How do you raise kids who share information about their lives with you? Can you give people a tool that you could use? Like, is there a takeaway?
I think that the tool that you can use is a warm and excited and interested invitation to asking your kids about their life and showing genuine interest in their life. And I think that in that interest, it like makes your kids want to tell you more in an authentic way.
But I also want to say that I think continuing to ask and continuing to be interested, continuing to be welcoming is very important. But if they are not like receptive, don't take that as just never asking again. I think continue to ask, continue to be interested, but there are times in life when they will not want to tell you, and you need to be respectful of that. And I think it's when parents often overstep and won't stop asking and have to know that.
So that's a great point, is that a parent can comfortably be okay with not hearing anything in response.
Yes.
Just keep asking.
That silence does not need to be misinterpreted as deafening and that there's something wrong, but just that.
Because asking lets them know we're here, we want to listen, we love you.
I have a question from Indre, who has a 3.5-year-old, and she's worried that she's going to screw up her kids by saying something or doing something wrong. And she wants to know, how do you not do that? And I just want to take a stab at this, because I think one of the things that Dad and I have done well is we have screwed up. We have said things wrong, and we are not perfect, but we're really fast and good at apologizing and taking responsibility for the things that we do wrong, or the things that we realize we regret in hindsight, or for doing things that may have hurt your feelings. I think that that's like, if you realize you're just a good person and you're doing the best that you can with whatever you got in terms of your own issues, and you're quick to take responsibility for them, I think it does show that you're open and that you're human and that you're trying. And I don't know.
I agree. Dad, do you have
Next
anything
question.
to say about that?
Yeah, I think that there's, I mean, transparency is big, and sort of leading by your own example and us being willing to share what's so about us, I think it's a good example that can only help in maybe a child wanting to do the same back towards their own parents. But it is fascinating to, even in this conversation, to be hearing about like things that we might think we did well or didn't do well, and you having a completely different interpretation about that.
Yeah.
Because you're naturally at a different age and have a different perspective. And anyway, it sort of makes me think this is all well and good, and ages and differentiation, like that's things are going to get misinterpreted along the way.
Yeah. Another big thing, Indre, I'm sorry if I'm saying your name wrong, beautiful name, by the way, is honest communication. Like, as parents, be in honest communication with each other, and with your kids, be in honest communication. Like,
What does that mean?
Telling them what's going on, telling them about your day, making sure, like, I feel like you guys were so open and honest in your communication with us, and you would always tell us what was going on or why something was happening, or if we asked a question, you would always tell us. And I think that watching you two be honest with one another, like, inspires us to want to be honest with you. And another thing too, like, under the umbrella of honest communication is, like, I have so many vivid memories of, like, growing up as a family, like, sitting around the fireplace or sitting at dinner or sitting like gathering. Like, you guys made such a conscious effort, whether you know it or not, to gather us as a family and to just talk about literally whatever it may be, with fireplace, wood, evergreens, mint, food, our love lives, whatever. Like, you made such a conscious effort to, like, gather us together and get us all talking and communicating with one another, that, like, there were so many times when I was like, I don't want to fucking talk to you guys for 40 minutes at the end of dinner. I want to go play Polly Pockets upstairs and chew on their clothes. But
me and Kendall, yeah.
But now that I'm at my age, it's like, those are the memories that I cherish the most, and those are the moments that I look forward to the most, which are, like, the rabbit hole conversations we get down. Because I think as kids, I'm trying to stay on track with the question, but, like, making a conscious effort to, like, talk to your kid, and, like, making it like a ritualistic thing where, like, you talk to them after dinner, or you're talking to them in the car, and, like, whether they like it or not, or whether they're showing they don't like it at that point, and maybe they won't, but, like, I think that they'll really appreciate that in the long run, because I know we all did.
I think, though, like, under the umbrella of honest communication, I think a massive part of that is vulnerability. Because I think watching my mom and dad grow up, like, literally I've seen my dad and my mom cry and break down and not be strong and tell us what's going on in their life, how traumatic it is, how sad, how frustrating, how simple it may be, and absolutely, like, be on the ground sobbing, which I think for a kid is a little bit jarring at first, to witness, like, your most idolized person as your parent be weak. But I think that watching our parents sit at the dinner table and bawl their eyes out because work didn't go well that day, or because they had a hard conversation with a friend, and being completely open and honest about it, just essentially made that possible for all of us to do the same.
That's really big. I think when you guys talk about honest communication, most adults forget that kids are truth tellers. And you also are lie detectors. And so when you say honest communication, what you're saying is you trusted us because what we were saying matched your felt experience.
In your actions.
In our actions. And I also think we tried very much to make sure that if either one of us were truly upset or frustrated or disappointed or sad, that you knew that it wasn't about you, that it was something going on in our lives, that you were not to blame for negative emotions that we were feeling. Is that true?
Yes. You were very outspoken about that. When, like, you would be in a bad mood or something, you would make sure, like, even, like, the first thing you would say, I feel like, when you would come in the room is, this is not about you. Like, this has to do with something else. And then you would continue to be a bitch, but it's fine.
we did do all right. If the firstborn is actually saying that stuff, normally it would just be the thirdborn that would pick up on that.
I love you guys.
I love you too. All right, here's another one. Now let's go to older kids because I think most people are now like, because so far the takeaway for me is seek connection. Because people are going to want to know the how. Like, we're talking conceptually.
No, seek connection over correction is so big. So big. You will correct your kids through connecting with them.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. And
I'm not a parent, but
Be vulnerable.
if you want your kids to be open with you, you have to model being open with them. And that doesn't mean sharing inappropriate things. Because I don't think you guys should have access to or know like the details about our marriage. Like, that's for Dad and I.
Thank God.
And so I feel like you have to model openness. You have to talk about what's going on in your life. You have to talk about your feelings. You've got to show your feelings.
I think that you guys showing that like at times you are weak shows that you're human, and like makes, I don't know, like it gives us more space to do that too. Cause like, okay, I'm going to stutter for a second until I get to what I'm saying. But like, in being weak, in crying in front of us, like I think so many parents are so just try to look so strong and perfect in front of their kids all the time. But it's like, by showing your kids that like you guys are also human, like allows your kids to feel those things too as they start to grow up.
I also think, like, I know so many of my friends till this day as a 23-year-old, a lot of them have been like, I've never seen my parents cry ever. And I think, and not saying that you need to walk downstairs and bawl your eyes out every goddamn day, but like, I just think that not showing your true emotion to your kids is sad and not real life, honestly.
Yes.
And
yes.
I think that hiding that away from your kids and putting on a smile every single day makes a kid feel like they can't have a bad day.
I also think that a lot of parents think they got to keep the stiff upper lip and they got to stay strong and they got to like be the one in charge because that's going to make the kids feel safe. And I actually think when you see your parents being human, it makes you know that you can count on them to be honest with you and that you can count on them to tell you,
Totally.
yeah, what's going on.
It's like honest feeling and communication. Like,
yeah.
All right, let's move on to the next question.
Okay.
But takeaway, don't be a dictator. Just be vulnerable.
Yeah, connection over correction. These were super relatable examples. And again, because I know that what our listeners crave is, okay, so what do I do? Because these are so relatable. And I know so many people in our family and also friends we're going to start with the kind of rumination side. And I'm sure this goes for adults too. You have those people in your life that can't let it go. They're still talking about the divorce and it's been final for 3 years. They're still complaining about the what happened when mom died and who got what and like just holding on to it. How do you approach that with somebody?
So I think that, let me do the girl example version and then let's think
let's
bigger
go
about,
rumination.
let's just
Yes.
go right down the rumination road. So what I encourage parents and also peers to do if they're caring for a teenager who is really spinning their wheels, is to say to them, listen, talking about feelings usually helps. But what I'm noticing is the more we're talking, the worse you feel. So let's do this. Let's put a pin in this. Let's make a plan to talk about it tomorrow. What time do you have? What time do I have? We'll like schedule it. We're coming back to it. But between now and then, let's just do something else. Let's go think about something else. Let's just take a mental vacation from this situation. And what is extraordinary is that so often when you do that, when I've met with that kid the next day or talked to the person the next day, they're like, yeah, I don't know what I was so upset about. Like just the space alone, the time alone brings it down to size. And they're no longer dumping stress hormones into their bloodstream, for that 24 hours, they're not thinking about it. So it helps people to find their feet. So that's a short term, something that just popped up. I think there's probably a different answer for those bigger questions around, people who are struggling to let go of a painful divorce or struggling to let go of how things went down in the family, you know, as in the wake of a parent's death. And my hunch is for that, there's just a lot of meaning to what occurred that has not really been examined
Processed.
or resolved.
Yeah. Yeah. What about with the boys? How do you approach that? You know, or any behavior of just distraction and kind of literally losing yourself in something so you don't have to face the pain of the situation and the emotions that you're feeling.
So it's interesting. Distraction can end up as costly coping, right? We can go right back to that category, which is, you know, so say a boy's had a really rough day and his strategy is to play video games for 8 hours. Okay, well, he may have gotten past the rough day, but now he has a new problem because he hasn't done his homework and he needs to go to bed, right? I mean, it creates its own, you know, side effects. So one way to take it up is just from that side of saying, look, I get it that you may have had a rough day and playing some video games helps you get through it. You can't be doing this so much that you now have a new situation to deal with.
Yeah.
Is there another way you could help yourself feel better? Now, the thing here about boys and expression, right? Like that's really what's underneath this is getting kids, but boys in particular, to talk about feelings, is that there's a lot caught up in why they don't talk about feelings. And I would say it's one of the hardest things in parenting that I hear about is parents of adolescent boys in particular who become very, very Sphinx-like.
Yes.
And very, very reserved. And I think that's its own fascinating and complex universe.
We'll have
to
you
make
back
sense
to
of.
talk about that. To make
Okay.
sense of, because I think that's its whole 45-minute conversation, don't you?
It's a big one. It's a big one and it's an important one and it can be done. But for now, I'll just say expression of emotion takes a lot of forms and it's not always in language. And what I've really become much better at is honoring that there are healthy ways that boys express emotion, but it's not always in words, though I also wish they were more often talking about what they were feeling.
Speaking of expressing themselves, one of the things that I learned in this book that was just life-changing. I wish I had known this 10 years ago. It's a word that explained my entire experience of raising teenage daughters, which is externalization. And the fact that, and it still happens today. We joke in our family, Lisa, and you may have, as you're hearing me explain this, you probably have somebody in your life who does this. They emotionally dump on me. So I've realized that when our daughters want to chat, they call my husband. And they have wonderful conversations about their life and what's going on in their relationships and what they need help with and blah, 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 blah. When there is any kind of upsetting or distressing situation, I will get 3 FaceTime calls in a row until I pick up. I get the tears, the venting, the frustration, the world is ending, da, 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 da. And then it's as if it's all done. They go back to their life, and I feel like somebody has thrown a bucket of slime on top of me. And now, of course, I'm all worked up, and your research shows that this is normal. And it has a name. This is normal behavior?
In teenagers, it's actually one of the very few things that is especially organized around adolescence is the use of we call it the defense of externalization. And Mel, I have a story. I have such a vivid memory of being a freshman in college myself. And I grew up in Colorado and I went to college in Connecticut. And I remember doing this to my mom. Like I remember getting her on the phone. Yeah, you did too, right? And I remember like calling her and be like, I don't know. I don't really like it here. I don't really have any friends. I'm not sure I'm going to make it. I don't know. Then I see my roommate. I'm like, I got to go, right? So I hang up the phone. I go out with my roommate, have a super good time. And I remember my mom called me the next day and she's like, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, like, I don't know what your problem is, but I'm fine. And my dad told me later, like, she'd been up all night. I mean, she was getting ready to like pack the cooler and drive across the plains to retrieve me. So this is not a new maneuver. Teenagers have forever and always done this. It's not a fun maneuver for parents, for sure. But it is also really hard to be a teenager. and they have a lot of big, powerful emotions. And I think sometimes the way they get through their day is to conveniently dump them, treat them like emotional trash, I think of, on the people who love them and are willing to collect their trash. And having discarded the trash, what we often find as parents is the kids don't want to talk about it. They're like, no, 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 I've dumped the trash. Like, don't ask me about it. I'm not going to answer your texts. I'm not going to pick up your phone calls. Like, just take the trash and make it go away.
That's unbelievable. You're exactly right. Because on the receiving end of it, I feel like they've dumped the trash on me. I'm weighted down. I'm worried about it. I'm thinking about it. I just had a sleepless night the other night because of something that one of our daughters is going through. And then I spoke to her in the morning. She's like, oh, what? That's fine. I mean, and it was as if nothing happened. I'm like, excuse me? I should have taped the conversation so you heard the DEFCON 10 bomb that you dropped on me. And I should probably apologize, Lisa, to my mom, because I would call her
I know.
every day from the payphone in my dorm hallway at Dartmouth, collect, to cry and complain. I don't like it here. I don't know anybody here. Everybody always has their friends here. And it got so bad after 2 weeks of this that my mom said, you either hang up the fucking phone and don't call me again and get out there and make some friends, or I'm coming to pick you up the next time you call me. And you will come back home and you'll go to the community college, and that'll be that. I never called her again. But then our daughters both, that same scenario, the first couple of weeks of school, just processing the hard emotion. Wow. But it's so liberating to hear that it's normal. And so should we just kind of let the trash fly and kind of step out of the way and not feel like we have to collect it? Just let them litter?
Yes. And I think that if you're worried in this interaction, you can say to your kid, do you want my help, or do you just need to vent? And that is often, if they say, I just need to vent, which is overwhelmingly what they are looking for, what I would say is visualize yourself opening an emotional garbage bag, right? And just let them unload all of that garbage into the bag. And then when the call is over, dispose of it, right? Don't carry it around. Don't take it to bed with you, right? Just be like, that was a garbage collection moment, and the kid needed a place to dump the garbage. And I am, as the loving person in their life, willing to collect their garbage. But yeah, you don't need to then go through the trash yourself.
You could have saved me years in marriage counseling, because I feel like a lot of the times what my husband and I then are at odds about is my stress about what the kids have just externalized by handing me their emotional garbage, and his ability to just either not be bothered by it, not worried about it, knowing that the wave is going. Thank you, thank you, thank you for writing about that. Every single time you're procrastinating, it's being triggered by stress. See, that's the crazy thing about procrastination. It has nothing to do with what you need to do. Procrastination, defined in the dictionary, is avoiding or putting something off, delaying it. But when you look at the research, and we're going to dig into that in a minute, the way that researchers define procrastination is that you are avoiding stress. That's what you're avoiding. You're not avoiding the application. You're not avoiding the illustration. You blow off things that take brain power because you are trying to avoid stress. Procrastination is the attempt to feel better in this moment. And strangely, what you're about to learn is that when I walk you through this 3-step research-backed technique that you're going to use every single time that you catch yourself procrastinating, is that procrastination is triggered by stress. That's what it's about. I'm going to say that again. Procrastination is a habit that you have learned and that you repeat whenever you feel stressed. And this comes from research from Dr. Timothy Peichel at Carleton University. His definition of procrastination is this: a subconscious desire to feel good right now. And he shares that procrastination, it's just all about stress. And I'm going to unpack this for you, because when you first hear that, wait, procrastination is a subconscious desire to feel good right now? How the heck does that make sense? I mean, Viddy really wants to draw, Mel. So wouldn't it make sense that she'd feel good if she were drawing? Sort of. And I'm going to explain this. It makes sense intellectually, But when I unpack how stress is triggering you to stop doing something that you care about or that you need to do, this is all going to be like, holy cow, why didn't I hear this sooner? So I'm going to give you an example, but I want you to understand that that stress that is triggering you to procrastinate, it could be something going on in your life right now, or it could be deep-seated stress, like childhood trauma. It could be anxiety or depression or something in your past that you haven't dealt with, a situation that you're worried about that's completely unrelated to work or to the things that you need to do. It might just be the relentless pressure and stress that you feel because you are so hard on yourself. I mean, you haven't even met Vidi, and you can hear in her voice. The woman beats herself up all day long. Talk about stressful. And that's why I'm so excited to be able to teach this to you today. It's why I love this topic so much, because when we talk about procrastination, we're not talking about getting shit done. You're going to get shit done as a byproduct. But when you truly understand the research and the topic of procrastination, it's about self-awareness, stress management, and being effective and productive on the things that matter to you. It's about feeling a sense of control and agency in your life. So let's really unpack what it means when I say that your habit of procrastinating is triggered by the stress in your life. Stop and think for a minute. What is stressing you out right now? I just kind of talked about the breadbasket, getting older, that kind of stuff. But let me stop and think, I'm stressing about the fact that my parents are getting older. And I haven't seen them in a while. I'm going to go see them in a week, and it's making me realize, my God, we have not seen each other. And I hate that. I hate that. I hate that. It stresses me out. Maybe the same is true for you. Or maybe your mom and dad, their health is failing, and it's really upsetting you. Or perhaps like I used to have profound financial stress, like just crushing, relentless financial stress, always on my mind, always worried about it. Or your best friends are going through a divorce. Maybe that's something that's on your mind and it's really bothering you and you don't know what to do about it. And so here you are in your day-to-day life. You got this big thing that is on your mind. You carry it around like a backpack of stress. You're thinking about it all the time. Maybe it's even just in your subconscious, just grinding away at you. You haven't been working on the dissertation. Oh my God, I need to work on that thing. And why am I not getting to it? And oh my God, I need to do this. And so here you go. And like Vidi, you sit down and there's something you need to do. Maybe you have to work on your portfolio. Maybe you got to make a few sales calls. Maybe you need to sort through all of those medical bills and figure out like how to get compensated and reimbursed from insurance. Talk about like something that requires concentration. Maybe you're working on your business plan. Maybe it's something you're really excited about. You're working on the next chapter of your book. But as you sit there and you start to do the work, here's what's interesting. You need to concentrate, don't you? Like doing that thing requires a bit of focus. It requires your prefrontal cortex to engage. You've been learning all about this on the Mel Robbins podcast. But you got the stress backpack on your back. You got all of this stuff ruminating through you. And it might not be something that is present of mind. It might not be like maybe all your kids are doing fine today. And so you're not worried about, you can't put your finger on it. Your stress backpack might be the fact that you're still living with the effects of childhood trauma. And so when you walk into work and you sit down, or you've got a list of phone calls you need to make, or you've got a report you need to finish, or you've got something you need to edit, and that's going to require you to concentrate, your brain literally looks at you and is like, excuse me? You want me to do an illustration right now? You want me to make a phone call to a stranger and try to sell them some of this stuff right now? Have you not seen that I have a stress backpack on? You want me to focus on 15 phone calls when I've been worried about how I'm going to pay my bills all day and what mom's going to do? Can we just look at some cat videos or some memes or some TikTok dance trends? I mean, I need a break. And then all of a sudden what happens? Next thing you know, 2 hours have gone. You haven't made a single phone call. You haven't drawn a single thing. You have not even cracked open the folder with a financial aid application in it. You've been online shopping. You've been scrolling through TikTok. You have been texting people mindlessly. You've been looking at social media. And then what happens next? You go, oh my God, Holy cow, it's already 3 o'clock. I didn't do any of this thing. And next thing you know, holy cow, you're even more stressed out. And let me go back to that example that I said about micro procrastination, which is the number of times you pick up your phone and you mindlessly just check out and you start scrolling on social media. I often will look at my daughters as they're just like, it doesn't even make that noise, but I would imagine they're going through it so fast. I'm like, what are you doing? Nothing. Taking a break from life. And it feels like you're doing something, right? Because you're like, but you're doing this because you want to check out for a minute. You don't want to have to think about anything. You don't want to have to focus on something. Why? Because your brain and your body's already taxed. See, when you're stressed, it triggers that fight, flight, freeze alarm system in your body. You want to know what procrastination is? It's freezing. I'm going to say that again because I can feel the wake-up calls going ding, 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 ding as you're listening. I'm going to say that again. You know that you have a fight or flight response, right? When you get stressed out, you go on edge. There's also freeze when you're stressed. You feel paralyzed. Procrastination is a form of freezing. Let me explain this. See, life triggers you. A bill arrives in the mail or in your inbox, and you're thinking, how the hell am I going to pay that? All of a sudden, you get triggered by stress. Your brain goes into survival mode to protect you, and you freeze. So, without even thinking about it, you procrastinate on something. Why? Because you're trying to feel a little better right now. That's why you look at social media. That's why you blow off the 15 phone calls because those feel hard. That's why you blow off the writing that you need to do or the video that you need to shoot or the thing that feels hard. And then what happens is because you've blown it off in order to feel a little bit better right now, you get a little behind. And guess what happens? You then feel more stressed. And this is exactly what Vidi is experiencing. And this is why you got to get in front of this procrastination habit, because this will very quickly spiral out of control. And here she is talking about how she gets triggered, that when she sits down and she starts to worry about, and here's her stress, is it going to be good enough? I got to get this right. I don't know if this is the right drawing to do. And she starts thinking and thinking and thinking and thinking. And she even uses the word siren. Naturally. She even feels like it's an alarm that's getting triggered. Listen to this.
I realized whenever anything good is about to happen, a siren goes off inside my head. Oh, it's too good to be true. Oh, it's too good to be true. Oh, you think you can do this. Seriously, you can't. They chose the wrong person. You're clearly not good enough. There are hundreds of much more talented artists. When you finish this project, they'll know that you are a fake, that you are not good enough. So I think you should just stop doing whatever you're doing right now. So, yeah. Every time something good happens, I find myself running from it. And I think we name this self-doubt as wanting to be perfect. And for God's sake, I don't even like perfect. I don't want my drawings to be perfect. I like the imperfect parts of my drawing. And another thing, sometimes this negative talk, this negative voice gets so loud. I know that if I do certain things, like if I go and give myself a high five, I am going to feel better and I will be able to get back and do my job. But I just don't do it. I just don't. It's like feeling shitty has become a comfortable feeling. I don't even know if that makes any sense.
That last line. It's like feeling shitty has become a comfortable feeling. Vidi, what you are describing makes perfect sense. What you're describing is how stress and this desire, this tension between just trying and expressing yourself and this deep-seated fear that it's not going to be right or it's not going to be perfect, and how that paralyzes you. That's why you're procrastinating. And what you're describing is how it triggers you to freeze when you sit down to work as an illustrator. And now you are in a vicious cycle because you're so used to feeling this way. It has become comfortable. And I want to make a really clear distinction, everyone, that the word comfortable doesn't mean you like it. The word comfortable means you're used to it, that it's normal to feel shitty. It's normal to feel stuck. It's normal to feel like you know what you need to do, but you can't make yourself do this. And I want you to hear me loud and clear. This is normal. This is a normal experience to have, and you can do something about it. And if you relate to Vidi like I do, good, because then you're seeing it. You're seeing that you're trapped in this cycle, and seeing it is really the first step, and you going, okay, good, because I'm going to break the cycle. I'm going to replace it with something else. If you're still trying to spot yourself in this vicious procrastination loop, let me give you another more relatable example that I've been hinting at several times. How many times have you had that experience where you're going to bed, you're brushing your teeth, and you start to feel stressed out as you're going to bed because you reflect on the night and you think, oh my God, I just wasted the whole evening. I just spent 3 hours scrolling through social media while I was lounging on the couch, watching something on Netflix, and I'm not going to get that time back. And now it's too late. And I know why you did it, and so do you. You were stressed out. You finished the day, and you were tired, and you were stressed, or you were worried about something, or you felt like, my God, I've been concentrating all day. I just need a break. They call this revenge procrastination. When you literally do nothing at night, you blow off time, you waste your time because you're getting back at your job because it stressed you out. And, look, is it a big deal to scroll on social media now and then? Of course not. But when this habit of micro procrastination or revenge procrastination starts to cause a cycle of you coming home and feeling stressed out all the time, and now you're going to bed stressed out, and you're waking up stressed out, and you didn't take the time tonight to set yourself up tomorrow morning, and now you're waking up stressed out because you're feeling behind based on what happened last night, this is how the stress builds and builds and builds. And so I think the big question is this: Mel, what do I do about it? You now got me freaked out. I'm no longer frozen. I want to run. I want to take a sledgehammer and break this cycle in half. So our son Oakley, when he was little, he was constantly picked on at school. So of course he felt nervous in the morning before he had to head into school.
Sure.
Plus the kid had dyslexia and ADHD, all of which was not diagnosed. So he's heading into a full day in a classroom where he physiologically, neurologically is incapable of doing what is going to be asked of him. And so his body, before entering that situation, sounds an alarm.
Totally.
And when the alarm sounds and the physiological changes happen, guess what physiological feeling he has? His stomach starts to rumble, because as the physiology of the alarm changes and the chemistry in his digestive tract changes, he starts getting butterflies that feel like pterodactyls. And then all of a sudden, instead of just giving himself a hug and going, it's going to be okay, today's going to be an okay day, I can face this, instead of reassuring himself, he goes into his head and says, oh my God, my stomach, I think I'm going to puke. I can't go to school. Holy, and he ramps himself. We were dealing with panic attacks with this kid where he would literally bang his head on the kitchen island. I don't want to go to school, crying. He would force himself to he would get so worked up, he would actually throw up. I mean, it was horrible. And I now can see that all of the interventions that were being done with this kid with therapists, which were all about just change the channel upstairs. Right. And then he would turn to them and say, but sometimes when I change the channel, it takes me to a channel I don't want to watch. So what if I change the channel of my thoughts and I get another bad thought? Like even he was reacting against it, but nobody taught us that what the kid needed was a hug, validation, reassurance in that moment physically to get the alarm to quiet.
Yeah. Yeah, you nailed it. So, I think that's part of it, is that especially with kids, especially with children, it's so important that they feel you, that they feel seen, heard, and loved. Touch is such a valuable thing with kids. It's just so amazing. My wife, Cynthia, is a somatic trauma therapist. She deals mostly with people that have pre-verbal trauma before the age of 7 years old. So they don't have a story about it. right?
Wow. How do they know they have trauma before the age of 7?
Because they feel it in their body. Because they feel alarmed every day and they don't know why. Because they haven't encoded it to a point where they can see. The amygdala never forgets. The amygdala encodes everything, birth trauma, everything. It encodes everything, but we don't have the retrieval mechanism to pull it back up. So we think we have no childhood memories, which is a bit of a semantic thing, because we do have childhood memories. We just can't retrieve them. That's the problem. And there's a whole reason for that I put on Instagram about how the hippocampus gets paralyzed, but I don't want to get too much into that. But basically, with Oakley, like it's getting him into his body, into a safe place. So you practice with him, putting this is what I do with, I know he's older now, but this is what I do with parents is put your hand on your child's heart, then put your other hand on their back about the same level as your front hand, and just sit there with them and just allow their nervous system to regulate and just allow them to feel it. And create this safe place in your body. Because this is the next place I'd like to go with this little interview that we're doing.
Yeah.
Is finding us, like people say, oh, I don't want to go to my body. It's like, I understand that. So how can we do that? Well, we find a place in our body that's either safe. With me, it's my breath around my nose, because I used to do a lot of meditation. And then what we do is we feel the alarm, and then we go into this safe place. And then we go back into the alarm.
Okay, so hold on. Let's walk through this. So you just reached up, and for those of you listening, we put uncut episodes of our podcast in long form up on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Mel Robbins. You'll be able to watch him do this. But he just put his hands kind of like if you wore a pair of glasses, you'd put your hands kind of under where your glasses are along your cheeks. And so when you said the way that you could practice this. So here's a takeaway for how you could practice this. You just got what I would call the love sandwich, hands on the heart, hands on the back,
sure.
And just hold somebody
yeah.
when they are having an alarm go off in their body until you can feel them slowly start to have the alarm turn off, and the clinical word being their nervous system starts to regulate again. They're in their body, they're in their safe space. But you also talked about this second tool where you locate a safe place in your body. And for you, it was sort of right here alongside your nose. I was trying to think of another one other than the heart. Like there have been times where I've like kind of tucked my hands under my armpits. It's almost like a mini hug. Yep. Almost like, I don't know what it is, that like, I suppose that it's, or like I could put my arms, I could give myself a hug kind of thing. Yeah. But so you could pick anywhere in your body, your stomach, for some people, like deep breathing. What are some other places that patients of yours have selected in the past? To give
it's all over. It's all, but basically I get them, where's a safe place in your body? And a lot of them will say, I don't feel safe. And I'll say, well, where's a neutral place? It's like, well, my right knee feels like there's no feeling in my right knee. It's like, okay, let's go into this pain of your heart, from this recent breakup that you've gone through. Now let's go and just bring our attention into that right knee. And then go back into this. I'm doing this quite a bit faster than I normally.
But when you say bring your attention to your right knee,
yeah.
If I'm doing this exercise with you, does that mean that I've got kind of my eyes closed and I'm mentally working my way down to my knee? Yeah. So you're mentally kind of locating your attention at your knee. Okay, got it.
Yeah, because that feels either safe or neutral, right?
Yep.
So what we're doing is we're basically training your unconscious mind that this pain that you're feeling in your heart is not all of you. Because what'll happen is the amygdala has no sense of time. So when you get triggered, you will go back, you will turn into that 11-year-old. And then basically what we need to do is train your amygdala like, no, I'm not back there. I'm not 11 years old anymore. I'm actually my age that I am now. You go into that, right knee that's neutral. Or if there's, for me, I go into the sinuses, right? So when I get alarm, I wake up with alarm every day, right? But I don't give it that much credibility anymore. And then I go into this place in my sinuses.
Do you actually touch it or do you just feel it?
I touch it. Yeah, I touch it. And I can do it a little bit now. I might get a little zony when I do this, but basically, and what I do is I can locate the alarm in my solar plexus. I talk about this in the book.
Where are the solar plexus?
Oh, it's right where your ribs meet, right where the bottom part of the sternum.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
So that's where I have my alarm from growing up with my schizophrenic dad. So I will go into that alarm. I will try and intentionally give it love and attention. And then I will go up into my sinus area that feels safe. And then I will go back into that place that feels uncomfortable. So the thing is, there's a theory that says when you experience a trauma as a child, part of you stays locked at that age for the rest of your life. Part of you, right? So what I'm
At
trying
times
to do,
I feel like all of me.
yeah, and it can be very overwhelming because it's unconscious, Mel. Like it's not something that we consciously feel. We actually get transported through the amygdala to that time. And through the insula. The insula is kind of like the place in our brain that kind of translate the body into the mind and the mind into the body. It's kind of like the way station. So I believe that we actually create this body memory, and I think the insula has something to do with this. And then we feel exactly the same way in our bodies now as we did when the trauma was occurring, which of course brings up all sorts of old memories, all sorts of old panic, and then we want to make
Fears,
sense of that.
stories, all of it. You're right.
And when your mind starts freaking out, then your body freaks out more. And that's when the grand panic attack happens, which is an emergency brake. It's designed to get you to stop thinking and to just remove yourself. And if you've ever seen somebody have a panic attack, they dart around a room, they can't breathe, and they feel like they've got to leave whatever situation they're in. This is how your body's designed to get you out of emergencies. The problem with somebody who gets a dysregulated nervous system is you feel like a truck's about to pull in your lane all the time, but your brain can't understand why you feel that way because there is no truck. Your body just got stuck there. And so when I started to understand that, I found this really interesting piece of research from Harvard Medical School called Reframing Performance Anxiety, where researchers wanted to know, since, people really screw up tests when they get nervous, right? You get nervous about a test and then you can't focus. And so you blow it because you've got performance anxiety, or athletes that really blow it when they get nervous before a game. Well, medically speaking, there is no physiological difference in your body state, physiologically speaking, between being nervous and being excited. Zero difference. So exactly what you talked about when the truck pulled into the lane, in the example that I gave, that experience that made you feel nervous, when you feel excited, the same thing happens. Your heart races, the blood leaves your digestive tract and goes up to your major organs. Your armpits start to sweat, your throat feels tight, your hands get clammy. Exact same physiological experience, excitement and nervous. The only difference between a situation that makes you excited and a situation that makes you nervous is what your brain is saying about what's happening. So if you're in a situation where you're like, oh my God, I'm going to screw up this test, this is going to be terrible, and you start working yourself up, and I'm so nervous, I'm going to blow this interview, I'm so nervous, of course you're going to start sweating. Of course your heart's going to race. If you and I are about to go see our favorite musician, let's say we have front row tickets, Adele is going to play right here in London. We are right there. Oh my God, she's about to come on stage. My heart's racing. My armpits are sweating. I'm excited because my brain's going, Adele's about to be there. So the body makes sense in the excitement situation. So the researchers at Harvard wanted to know, well, given that physiologically it's the exact same experience, is it possible to trick the brain in a moment when you're nervous and make your brain think you're excited? And if you did trick your brain in a moment when you were nervous to believe that you were actually excited, would it impact your ability to perform? And the answer is yes, you can trick your brain in a situation where you're nervous to believe that you're actually excited. And yes, it profoundly impacts your ability to perform. And so they put people in control groups in like a karaoke competition, a negotiation competition, a standardized test, and a track meet. And there were only, the only difference between the groups is one group was taught in a situation that made them nervous to simply say, as dumb as this sounds, I'm so excited. I'm so excited to run this race. I'm so excited to take this test. I'm so excited to get out there and sing. Even though they felt nervous, I'm so excited. And the people that were taught to say, I'm so excited, outperformed the people who had no tools. And the reason can be explained by chemistry and physiology and neurology. If you get too nervous and you start to get too worked up and your thoughts start to spin and your body stays in a fight or flight state, your brain releases cortisol. And cortisol impacts your brain's ability to focus. So all your preparation goes out the window because you just blew it with the cortisol in your brain. When you say, I'm excited, even if you feel nervous, your brain buys it and doesn't release cortisol, which allows you to focus on what you need to do. And so I started experimenting with this because I was deathly afraid of flying. And at the age of 45, I'm now all of a sudden, because of that TEDx talk, starting to take off on the speaking circuit. And I'm having to board planes. And I'm being bombarded with these thoughts of, I'm going to die. I'm never going to see my kids get married. Is my husband going to remarry? Will I make it? And so I said, I got to figure out a better way. And so I stumbled into this project and I came up with this strategy. And this is freaking genius. I've taught it to millions of people. It's curing people's anxiety. I kid you not. Therapists are using this around the world. It is extraordinary. So before you have to do something that makes you nervous, come up with anything that you can grab onto that makes you excited about what you're doing. So for example, with the example of flying, before I get on an airplane, I'm not afraid to fly at all anymore. But back in the day, back when 8 years ago, before I would get on a plane, so I'm flying to London, I would think of something I'm excited to do when I get to London. And so before I board that plane in Boston, I would think about coming here and meeting Stephen and getting to hang out with him. When I get on that plane and we're up in the air, and all of a sudden we start bouncing around like, something, like turbulence in the air. And my body goes, oh my God. I close my eyes and go, I am so excited to see Stephen. This is going to be amazing. And what happens is that my mind goes, whoa, hold on. She's not nervous. She's excited to see Stephen. And your body literally settles. And your mind locks on to this thing that makes sense because I'm going to London. I'm going to see you. And if I'm going to see you, the plane obviously makes it. So there's nothing to worry about.
Hey, it's Mel. Thank you so much for being here. If you enjoyed that video, by God, please subscribe because I don't want you to miss a thing. Thank you so much for being here. We've got so much amazing stuff coming. Thank you so much for sending this stuff to your friends and your family. I love you. We create these videos for you. So make sure you subscribe. Mwah.